I'd been out looking for a job all day. I came back and the bed was in the middle of the recording area. And Frank had already taught Theo how to use the control room, to play some background music. And he said, well, this creepy guy that's a used car dealer came by today and offered us $100 to make an audio tape of that sounds like someone having sex, So I thought maybe we could do that. And so he had taken the bed out of our bedroom and put it in the middle. We're fully dressed. The bed did squeak nicely. So there's Theo playing this music in the room. And the only setup was Frank said, okay, the deal is I'm going to be pretending that I'm a guy that picked you up in a bar. And you're underage. And now we're in a motel and we're discussing this. And so I said, okay, that set the stage for the scenario. And then Frank says, well, tell me, little honey, have you graduated from high school yet? And I said, no, I graduate this in the spring, but I'm going to go to summer school. And he's looking at me. He doesn't know what I'm going to say next. And he said, well, what are you going to be studying? And I said, cosmetology. And then we would laugh. And Theo would say through the microphone, okay, get back to business. And then we'd go, rustling. We're fully dressed. We're not porn people, porn stars. But this went on for easily an hour and a half, trying to make this sexy-sounding tape for a used car dealer to play at a stag party for a friend of his that was getting married. And we thought that was real stupid. Like, who the hell wants to listen to an audio tape of heavy breathing and moaning and stuff? Oh, okay. So what was really a comedy tape, I went to bed. Frank stayed up for hours in the middle of the night and edited it down into a nice little 5-minute cassette, of something we thought sounded really stupid. But in the morning, the guy shows up, and I'm looking through, Theo's in changing Todd's diapers on the end of the bed, and, this guy's in there in the control room with Frank. And we're peeking through the window across the recording area, through the control booth window, and going, here's this guy with slick back hair, in his 40s, in a really loud plaid jacket. And we're going, ew, what a creepy looking guy. What a typical used car salesman. And then, we're just visiting, and we're playing with Todd on the bed, and all of a sudden those double doors just slam open. And Frank is walking. We're not even really focusing on this. Frank's walking across the recording area saying, Pete, Theo, we're under arrest. And we're not looking. However, it does sound like elephant walk. There were 11 men following him as they're walking over to the doorway of the bedroom. I look up, all these men are standing at the end of the bed, and this guy steps forward and says, I'm Detective James Willis of the Sandberg, Vice Squad. Please identify yourself. I pulled a sheet up over myself, and I said, no. You can all get out of here, and then I will get dressed. And then I'll be happy to talk to you about whatever in the world this is about. But, you can all get out of here now. And so they all go out in the other area, and Theo leaves with the baby. They take her right in the office to interrogate her, and they take Frank in the control room. Well, what they didn't notice was there was a big lit-up jukebox against the wall over there, and aquariums filled with decapitated dolls' heads, and it was a lovely kind of wacky decorating idea. The jukebox was the door to the bathroom. So I just slip out of bed, and you had to duck down. I open up the jukebox and go in there. It's the only entrance to the bathroom. I'm in there just polishing my eyelashes and washing up and everything, and pretty soon I can hear them all running all over the place. They can't find me. So I stepped from the jukebox in my own good time, and that Detective Willis is the guy who decided he needed to be interviewing me. So we sat down while all the photographers are taking pictures of, Frank's shit list. He had a big list on the wall there, and little Todd Williams was on it, only a year old. and it was the name and then why you're on the shit list. Todd's was, he pisses too much on the extension cords. But they sat me down while they're, taking what they consider evidence. They're taking all his reels of tape and all of his, original music that's recorded, throwing it into boxes, and Detective Willis says, well, tell me, Lorraine, have you and Frank ever engaged in oral copulation? I said, well, in the first place, I know that's a felony in the state of California. But tell me, are you asking because it pertains to this little charade or for your own perverse curiosity? That started the tenure of the sort of voice of our interrogation there. It was just awful. And he said, he was asking about, is that really you on the tape and everything? I can't believe this is going on. And then I said, you're a vice squad detective. Exactly what is that? Do you spend really the bulk of your time in public toilets and trapping homosexuals? Are you married? Does your wife know you do that? Anyway, that's how I kept talking to him. So he was... Then all of a sudden the band showed up for practice. Jimmy, Carl Black, and Motorhead, and all the boys. And they come into the middle of this horrendous scenario, and immediately they were all lined up and asked to roll up all their sleeves and hold their arms out. And I'll never forget Motorhead. It was so adorable. He was at the end of the line right in front of me, and he's going like this. Pete, they're looking for tracks on my arms. Who never drinks or, smokes or anything. He was so excited because it was kind of glamorous. I was going, oh my God. Anyway, they left Theo there and the band and took Frank and I off to jail. And Phil Spector bailed Frank out within about 12 hours or something, but they kept me there for 5 days because we didn't have enough money to get me out. And they would take me downstairs. Well, in the first place, they put me in a chair in the middle of the kind of room where the cops are all changing their clothes and cleaning their guns and stuff. They had me sitting in that chair in that room, and they would play the tape over and over again. I'll tell you, it started sounding really dirty. My face was just beet red, even though we thought it sounded stupid. Well, when you're all by yourself in there, it started sounding pretty suggestive, but there was virtually no dialogue on it, hardly at all. Well, honey, are you underage or something, but nothing else. But they would take me in the detective's office and ask me all these questions. Is that you and Frank really having sex on this tape? And I'd say, Frank and I are in love. We would no more do that than Groucho Marx would masturbate on TV nationwide. And so I had no idea they were taping me. I was only 19 years old. So when we did go to court, they had to clear the courtroom because everybody wanted to be in there. The big porn stars or something. And by the way, the thing about being arrested for pornography and suspected sex perversion, that had to do with the oral copulation question. So they put that in there. But when we were in the courtroom, the prosecution stands up and says, we have some tape. We have something we'd like to present now that speaks to the character of Lorraine Belcher. And Frank's going, oh no. Anyway, the courtroom was cleared, and all of a sudden, oh God, there's my voice saying all these things. I never answered a question. I asked questions, and I more or less insinuated that they were all perverts. So the judge, Frank just turned white as a ghost and went, what have you done? And our attorneys were going, let's just listen. And I knew we were kind of all right when the judge sat back and lit his pipe and put his feet up and started laughing. And at one point, one of the attorneys leaned over to me and said, you didn't even need us. You're doing just fine. But the fact is, we couldn't afford these attorneys, and so we couldn't afford to keep coming to court all day. So we pled nolo contendere, which is we're not going to fight this. But, you know. So Frank had to go to jail for 10 days in his little orange jumpsuit. And couldn't be in the company of a female under the age of 21 without a chaperone, which caused us to have to hang around with Motorhead's mother and Motorhead all the time. Our chaperones. But, you know, they took all of that recorded material out of his studio. And it took him over 10 years to get any of it back, because they insisted on listening to all of it before they would, you know, give it to him. So that first, you know, the Freak Out album, third side, second cut of music, and he sent a copy of that to James Willis of the, you know, Vice Squad, autographed it and told him what cut to listen to, and with a little note saying this is being sold all over the world commercially. So, well, there's that part. Yeah.
And just because I'm curious, how'd they get that picture for the newspaper?
Oh, I gotta tell you this. It's really funny. After they'd been asking me all these horrible questions, and Frank was still in the control room, at one point I said, I'd like to speak to Frank by myself for a minute. Is that possible? And he said, sure. So we go over to the control room, and the guy that's interrogating Frank is asked to leave, and they let me go in there with him by myself. And Frank is just apologizing like crazy. He said, I'm so sorry. And I went, you know, his gesture, oh, well. And then he just threw his arms around me, and we were laughing. And this photographer kicks open the door, because it was just a swinging door, with the camera. And so it looks like we posed for this picture, grinning like we're so proud. And it was that we were holding each other and laughing. And then the door was kicked open, so we still had those expressions on our face, and I went, oh, that doesn't look good. That can't be good. But it sold a lot of newspapers, you know, and it was funny because we would be driving around with Motorhead in the car before the trial, and we were bailed out and wondering what to do. And, you know, at a stoplight, people would go, you know, and be pointing. It was like, ooh.
Just to continue with the timeline, because when you were arrested, did you actually go back to the studio, or was it sort of off after
Yeah.
that?
Really, after that happened, Studio Z just really dissolved. When Frank became disappointed or offended by something, it's, you know, done. And in that community, he was suddenly this pervert and, you know, kind of creepy guy, even though it was a setup. And he was not, you know, he wasn't even allowed to have Playboy magazine. And he was always in danger of having them come in and take a look around. See if he was with an underage woman, see if he had any Playboy magazines or anything. So it was like over for him. You know, the whole deal in Cucamonga. They pretty much messed that up for him.